Yes, second. So, welcome to the Happiness Sleep podcast. It's actually a podcast where we speak to people who live life knowing that no matter what shit life throws at them, they will always have a smile on their face. And we talk about the small mental leaps that they kind of take when they're faced with mountains in front of them. Now, in this episode, we have Mugdha from iDrive. She's the founder of iDrive. And I'm not going to say anything about her. I'm going to just ask her to just explain what she does. Actually, just tell us what iDrive is in a couple of sentences, and then we're going to go back into your.
I can just tell you in one sentence: we make diseases disappear. That's what iDrive does. Okay, so how do we do that? That will take 15 minutes. But thank you so much for having me on the show, Reilly. I love sharing my story. I really do, and thank you for giving me the space to do that.
But
not sound so woo and say that we just make diseases disappear. A little more insight into that. We use the practice of functional medicine to work on chronic or lifestyle diseases. So things like type 2 diabetes, obesity, thyroid issues, PCOD, any of these lifestyle diseases, even autoimmune stuff, even like things that happen with cognitive decline, Alzheimer's and all of that. So we work with a whole lot of diseases, nearly 158 plus diseases, using the functional medicine approach of looking for a root cause, of finding out what is triggering the disease, using data from blood tests and advanced tests like genetics to come to a conclusive answer of what's really going on in your body, and then creating a solution to reverse that, right? And the solution usually is through nutrition. But a very, very personalized, very, very customized, very bio-individual approach. We don't do shakes and meal replacements when I say nutrition.
Thank God.
Yeah, it's not that. It's really you learning how to use your kitchen for your own benefit, right? Now, if there are 3 people living in a household, one person's needs might be really different from the other ones based on their genetics, their environmental exposure, their cultural preferences, their emotional aptitude itself to deal with life, right? Mm-hmm. So each person has different needs for food. Okay. You can't do a one size fits all unless you know what is it that a body really requires, right? So that's what we do. Very, very personalized, customized approach to reversing diseases using the functional medicine approach of blood tests and data from the body to create solutions. That is one. The second thing is we also run an academy where we're teaching this to other people, right? So other nutritionists, we also have a lot of physiotherapists, homeopaths, Ayurvedic doctors, MBBS doctors who are now signing up with us to learn how to do this. That's a 4-month course. And the third vertical we have is our own supplements. So magnesium, B complex, vitamin D, these nutrients that are not there in food. We started creating really good quality supplements with them so that you're eating the best of the best, but like there is no magnesium coming into our lives anymore. Like the water is drinking, we're all drinking corporation water. It's not there at all the way our ancestors used to get it. So what are you going to do? Like, we have to supplement for it. So that's what we do. 3 things that we do primarily, and then we have a lot of fun while we do that.
The office looks very happy and colorful. Yeah.
It is very colorful. We've got like crystals and plants all over the place. If I turn my camera, you'll see the plants. And it's a bunch of really mad people. The founder is... I think that anyone who's striving to be sane in a world that's designed for insanity is really doing that as well. Accept the fact that we are all insane and just live with that, right? And be the weirdos that we are meant to be. So the team is like that as well. So it's a very happy, vibrant place. Because it's a big problem we're trying to solve. If we can't be happy while doing that, we're going to
exactly
the world itself.
That's so true. So I'm guessing there are no like unhappy employees working with you, or anyone who's just doing it for the money.
They are, and if they come also like that. So when we hire from outside, people think jobs are for money, right? So sometimes they come with that mindset, but then like part of the culture is getting everyone to align with that culture. So even before the company was registered in 2019, I made values. Like I made a list of the values.
Okay.
And I was like, first the values, the vision, then I'll go register the company, right? Because the vision really tells us why do we exist, right? Like why are we even existing as an entity, as a company? Without knowing that, there's no point in us coming every day to work.
Correct.
So people come with that sometimes that this is a job, but over time we kind of decondition them to that and get them to understand what is it that we're really doing here.
Super. So now let's go back a few years
Yeah.
and tell me a bit about your childhood. Yeah. From what I've read and from what I know, you had a very nice farm life where a lot of nutritious food your mom used to get for you. And so tell us, like in short, about your
Yeah,
childhood.
so I'm not. So I grew up in Whitefield before Whitefield became the monster that it is now, right? So
Correct.
it was a really nice gaon, so
Yeah.
a village where a lot of the Anglo Indians had retirement homes. So it was clean, no pollution, lots and lots of trees, and all the
Indeed.
produce was like locally grown by farmers around, right?
Correct.
Mom was a nurse, so mom was already in the world of taking care of people's health, right? And she was a
Okay.
nurse at that time, which was and she worked for free for 14 years. I can't
Oh,
imagine. Yeah, so she was part of this organization that was doing a lot of like there was a free hospital there in Whitefield, and she worked there as a nurse. So
okay.
she knew health was important, right? So my sister and I were raised with that, like home food. Anyway, it was a gav, so there was no access to processed foods and restaurants and all of that. So home food. Dad was in the ice cream industry. I mean, he comes from a dairy background, so he was exceptional with flavors and like experimenting with food and all that. So I was very primed to food being very interesting and fun, and food like eating good quality healthy food is important. Like there was no
Correct.
other, right? So I was raised like that, and mostly I'd be on trees. So I couldn't understand the world of adults so much. So like if I was not at home, I would be found on some tree sitting somewhere. I remember many times, like my mom would come looking for me, and then she'd call out on some tree, and I'd be sitting there. So that was my life: puppies, kittens, earthworms, frogs, and trees.
What a childhood should be. Perfect. So there's one thing which I came across
Yeah,
was this term. I'm going to read it out. It was hyper stimulation junk food. I saw
yeah.
you reading this word a lot during your college days, right? You said it didn't affect you, but once you finished college, then it kind of. So you can just tell me, like, what does this mean?
So junk food. So everyone knows what junk food is. It's all of
Correct.
this pre-processed food, right? So why am I calling it hyper? I mean, it's not just me calling it. Like even other authors. This guy who wrote that book, Hooked. Who was he? I forgot the author's name. But what happens is in all of these food manufacturing industries, like the big ones, the Danones
Mhm.
and the Nestle's and all of that, there's a lot of science that goes behind understanding the human palate, understanding taste, how it stimulates, understanding the combination of tastes and textures and flavors, and how
Mhm.
that can create an addiction in the brain.
Okay.
Because, see, every time something stimulates our senses, certain neurotransmitters are released. Now, if you create the perfect mix of the taste and the texture, like the salt and fat, like you have this ad, no, you can't just eat one, some chips, ruffles or leader.
Pringles.
So Pringles, yeah.
Ah,
So it's really designed like you really can't. Like you'll eat
exactly.
and immediately there'll be a craving for another one because what has happened is in your brain multiple centers have gotten lit up. Like you could do a functional MRI and see this that when you
Okay.
eat so many centers light up, right? So evil scientists are engineering food. So this junk, it hyperstimulates your senses, and human beings are mostly hedonistic, right? Like we have pleasure seeking missiles.
Hmm.
um, if food is doing that, and there are moments of, let's say, social anxiety, there are moments of loneliness, there are moments of isolation, there are moments of feeling disconnected, disembodied because of some trauma, you are going to look for a way in which you're going to feel good or feel comfortable. And food often serves that purpose, right?
Hmm.
So it's okay to use food for grounding if it's like a khichdi, which reminds you of comfort food that your mom made for you. But when you
Correct.
start turning to this junk food, it's triggering. It's like Netflix. You can't stop after one episode. They design it in such a way that there's a cliffhanger and there's it
Correct.
automatically goes to the. You don't even have to take effort.
Yeah.
Effort
I
to
used to, I
stop.
used to work for an OTT. I know how we used to do it.
Yeah. So there's extra effort taken in stopping that next episode than playing it.
Correct.
It's the same with these kinds of foods, right? They hyperstimulate and then they create a stimulus for immediately eating more. And in the end, you're losing your health, right? And these guys are making money. So
Correct.
hyperstimulating junk food is that. How I got addicted was I was not really exposed to a lot of this as a kid because the environment we grew up, there wasn't even too much access to this, right?
Okay.
But we moved. We moved from Whitefield. We came to Pune. So that was ninth grade. And eighth standard, I had fallen off from the terrace. So I had kind of I was like in a coma for a night, and then I was given anti-epileptic medicines for a year. So I was already taking stuff that was impacting my brain, because anti-seizure, anti-epileptic medicines are not the best thing to put into a young brain, like a 14-year-old's brain, right? So that was going in. We moved cities. So all of my anchors in terms of whatever few friends I had in the village and the trees and everything, that was taken away. Nature was taken away from me. I come to the city, and the city kids speak, it's English, but it's still a different English, right?
Correct.
So the words they're using, like they're watching sitcoms, they I didn't know the stuff they were talking, so I couldn't fit in. And they would also do this thing, like every evening they'd all get pocket money, and they'd have like Maggie and Coke and like those, those ice candies and stuff like that. So I was like, okay, I can't watch the same sitcoms they do, but this is something I can do with them. So I started hanging out with them with all of those snacky things. And then, of course, I got addicted to it, and I was like, okay, if they are cool, I'm going to be way cooler than them. I want to do more of this, right? Like, I'll be the coolest one here. So it was literally like one Maggie a day, one Coke a day. My mom was freaking out, of course, but then also I was a rebel. I was hitting puberty then. All of these meds were going into my brain. My mom, of course, was concerned that she'd almost lost me, right? I was still alive. So there was a little leniency there, like I'm glad, like, you're alive. I think that kind of became the perfect storm, and I started getting like overweight and obese and all of that. And there was a certain, so through college also that continued. So I was always above my ideal weight. I was always obese, but it skyrocketed in pregnancy. That's when I really moved itself.
Okay. So you want to talk about a bit about after you got pregnant. I know you had gone to Toronto and then you came back, and you said that you were not at the best mentally, you were not at the best physically. I remember seeing a photograph of you looking very, very depressed in a maroon color blouse. The kind of typical before picture, and now you have your after picture. Walk through a bit of that, and like while you're telling us, if you could just tell us, did you use food as a kind of, as an emotional eating, and what kind of thing that you tell yourself is like, no, I'm going to stop?
Yeah, so I mean, before we go into that, it's not like my emotional eating pattern has completely gone off, Reilly, if I'm being very honest. Even now, I turn to food, it's a pattern, because so many years, right? Like right from 8th grade, I began to abuse food as a drug. So it's a pattern I still struggle with. But that trajectory, right? So what had happened was, I was in a marriage. See, society tells us study, work, get married, have a child, you will be happy as a default, right?
Yeah.
I thought, makes sense. This is true. Even if I could see counter evidence to that in my own family, dysfunctional relationships, it is just so normalized that you think this is how human beings are meant to live.
Exactly. Yeah.
That I studied really well. I studied, I did my master's in nutrition because I love the subject. Then I met someone. It was a very, very Bollywood kind of romance, right? Like that, head over heels, bagavat karke, get married, all of that, right? Very, very romantic and very much fitting into every idea of what love should be like.
Okay.
But like, and not to fault him, like I'm sure both of us were in the same place in terms of our understanding of relationships and love and all of that, right? But that marriage didn't really serve my best interest, in the sense it was a marriage that I was just living the same dynamic that I'd seen as a child, right? Like a woman is supposed to kind of be at service, all of that. So I kept abandoning my own needs, my own self, just for that. And the pregnancy, I mean, I love I wouldn't change that at all, right? Like having a daughter is like the most beautiful thing ever. But I was already sick inside, right? Like I had thyroid. Now I know my thyroid was messed up. I had insulin resistance. I did my genetics, and I discovered that I have a lot of genetic mutations in neurotransmitter pathways itself. So I can't make the happy chemicals that normally people can.
Okay.
My body, like it's broken.
Okay.
So, now all of that was already there. Having to grow a baby inside my womb meant that my body's physical, like the demand for health just went up exponentially, right? So everything that was already crashed even more.
Okay.
So the depression began in pregnancy. It was not diagnosed. No one knew that was happening. I would have these spells of crying and weeping and all of that. I didn't know what was going on. Postpartum, it really became worse. Right after, like, she was born, by the time she was a year old, I went into clinical depression to the point of suicide ideation. It was really, really bad. And we were still in India at that time. I don't know why I couldn't talk openly about it as much as I speak about it now. Also, I was like, that was a phase when I was in the entire corporate world, HR and everything. And I've always been a little bit of an alpha, like, want to be the best,
Okay.
want to compete, right? So when my daughter was born, I had made an Excel sheet for a schedule. She will eat at this time. She'll sleep at this time.
That's an HR thing, no?
I actually found that spreadsheet. I was searching for something else, like literally 4 months ago, and I found Loka's eat, sleep, poop schedule. What was wrong with me? And I felt like a failure because my baby wasn't sticking to an Excel sheet that I had made.
Okay.
That much of a perfectionist thing I had in my head, right? So anyway, I mean, the depression happened. I wasn't speaking to anyone about it. I kept feeling like a failure, like I am incapable, I can't do this and all of that. I went on antidepressants for a year. That made my health even worse because it induced so many carbohydrate cravings, and then I was just eating like sweet, and it was just like a downhill ride, right? My mom saw that happening, and then mom was like, I think you should stop taking these meds because it's not working for you.
Okay.
So I tapered down and stopped after a year and a half. But then by then, like, the weight gain had become like a constant thing, right? And like, I couldn't stop facing reality that I was living a life that I was really not happy about, right? Like the stay at home, not using my brain, just working service, husband-in-laws and all of that. It just was not my design. So it took time for me to come to terms with the actual action I had to take for that. And then we moved to Toronto, like, as a family itself.
Okay.
So there, and I lost my mom by then, right? Mom passed away in 2014. Also a lot due to medical negligence. By 2016, we went to Toronto, and that isolation there, like just living alone, just like waking up morning to evening, just doing household chores, and really not having anything to do beyond like loading the dishwasher, folding the laundry, vacuuming the house, and picking up my kid from the school bus and dropping. I was done with that, right? Like, so the depression really became intense, and then I made a choice to walk out of that marriage and come back to India.
Yeah, so what? Sorry, I'll butt in here. It's like, what was it? Like, what went through your head and said, no, this is it. No, I cannot. I don't want to do. It's a conscious thing.
Small things, right? Like it was not like one big thing, and a lot of people, like especially my family, who couldn't come to the terms with the fact that I ended a marriage. I'm the first one the only one, I think, for a very long time who's divorced in my family. It's a very
It's the same with me, sir.
Yeah. So they couldn't understand why, because someone was like, at least it didn't hit you. I'm like, why would I wait for a day when... So that's the thing, right? It was not a physically abusive marriage as much as it was causing emotional turmoil for me just being in that relationship, because the conflict and the fights and the absolute lack of care towards me and my existence, I couldn't really take it anymore. Right? He was on his own journey of like figuring out what has to happen. I have no angst against him. He, of course, has a lot of angst against me because I walked out. But it was these small things where every day I would feel like I don't want to live anymore. And the thought of getting out of Toronto and coming back to India would make me happy.
Okay.
So I followed that feeling of happiness. I literally followed that feeling of happiness, right? Like, there is a thought that makes me happy. Let me see what that thought is about. And then that thought, like, I would let it expand, right? It would look like me coming back to India, finding a place to stay, doing something of my own, fixing my health, meeting my friends, being with family. So that thought would expand like that. And, just thinking about it would make me feel happy.
Okay.
I would come back to reality where I was sitting in Toronto and like the dishwasher had just beeped and then I had to kind of
come out of the dreamland.
So I was like, instead of just ruminating and imagining and thinking like that and then living in compromise and living in conflict and living in unhappiness, why don't I just take charge of my own happiness? Because no one else is going to do it for me. Then that's where I decided to come out. Because I was also, so I'm very self-critical even to this day, right? The perfectionism has switched a little bit. It's made me like more learning oriented and ask myself the right kind of questions instead of berating myself. So I would then ask, right, like, okay, if the thought of going to India makes me happy, why am I here? Right? And then it'd be like the marriage and like this and that. And then I'd be like, okay, for whom is this marriage important? Then it'd be like dad and family. What am I going to tell my friends? And I'd be a failure. And so I had to break down a lot of constructs in my own head for a long time to be able to do that. So I went to Toronto in April 2016. I came to India in Jan 2017. It took that long.
Okay.
For it to build and for me
I need to drop.
Yeah, right. And that's when I came. So I came here with my daughter because she wanted to be with me. When I came in Jan, I came with the choice of even not going back to full-time corporate work because I knew that was similar to what I was feeling in the marriage. I did not like that anymore. I wanted to do something of my own. I wanted to kind of help people, be of value. And I came here with her. It was not as rosy as I imagined it to be. A lot of people couldn't deal with the fact that I just walked out of the marriage and come here without any kind of plan, right? I just like jumped off the cliff with the belief.
Did anyone react to you leaving Canada and come back to India, where like Canada is always like the better life, and then you come back to India?
Yeah, they thought I'd lost my shit. I had of course lost my mind, but in the right kind of way. But so I didn't get the acceptance that I thought would happen here.
Okay.
Right? I received a lot of rejection instead for that decision. And I made peace with it. I like that. I've always had strength internally, right? So I came back with my daughter, and then I was doing some work in probiotics there in Canada, kefir, kombucha, and all of that. So I thought I could make that here and sell it. And I started doing that. So I was making like 36 liters of kefir a day and kombucha and stuff like that. And people are buying. So Pune, that thing just caught on.
Okay.
Because he was like, oh, she's come from Toronto. She's come with these magical... this was long ago, before kefir kombucha became mainstream, no?
Okay.
So Midday did an article about me, and then suddenly like people were calling me from all over Pune. So that was going well. But my health was not really improving, right? And then as I studied more, as I researched more, and I went into functional medicine, I discovered dairy also can create a lot of inflammation in people's health. So I was like, fuck, how can I drink kefir anymore if I know dairy can cause problems? So I stopped doing that. What was happening is, before we left for Toronto, I was doing full-time corporate work. I was really making good money. We had like a really nice big house, nanny and maid and driver and all of the works, right?
The corporate lifestyle perks, right?
Yeah. So my daughter was used to that kind of a life in India.
Okay.
When I told her I'm going back to India, you get to choose. You want to be with me or you want to be with dad? She said, I'm coming with you, of course, because she missed her friends and she missed all of that. She hated Toronto as well at that point of time. She came with me. This time it was all different. Like, I could only rent a place that was like 12,000 a month or something.
Okay.
Really small, tiny, shady house. Not an apartment complex the way we used to live earlier. Money would be a constant issue. She'd want to go to the mall and I'd be like, there's no money. And things like that. No? And there was like one day. So when I stopped doing the kefir kombucha work and my health also was crashing, I just didn't have energy. Like, money wasn't there, right? And there was like one day where I just had 300 rupees in my account and I had to figure out rent, I had to figure out food for her and me. And she didn't like that, obviously. Like, she could see her survival getting threatened, right? Like with this mad woman and her quest for evolution. So she started getting sick. And now that I would do so much work in the psychosomatic domain, I can see how those events kind of triggered her illness also, right? So she needed hospitalization a couple of times and I didn't have the money for that. My dad actually came in and saved my ass there.
Okay.
So despite whatever misgivings he had about me walking out of the marriage, for her, there was never this thing, right? So he took care of her hospitalization and stuff. And she said she wanted to go back to Toronto to be with her dad for a little while.
Okay.
So I was like, okay, I'm not going to get in the way of that. So she went, and when he came to pick her up, he actually served the divorce papers. And in that, like, the entire custody thing kind of got messed. I was in no place to fight. Yeah, I didn't even have the resources. So she went there, right? So then I was even more alone here. I was grieving that like my daughter wasn't here. Mostly my support systems weren't supporting me, the ones who were there before. I was living a life that was like absolutely unfamiliar to them. And that's when I went into this entire quest of like, what am I here for really? Like, who am I? Like, just tell me what am I supposed to do? Like, taken away everything that were my structures and identity structures and anchors, right? So I'm still here to serve. Tell me how to serve. And that's when I started also fixing my own health using functional medicine. Now, when I started doing that, my Facebook profile picture started changing. So friends and
sorry, I'm gonna butt in again. What made you like? I'm trying to understand. You like your daughter has just gone back to Toronto. Your life has changed. She was the one person who was there with you in your house, no, in those 4 walls. So there was always a face to see. And now again, that has changed. You've gone through change. You've gone there. You come back to a different lifestyle. Again, that's changed. What made you change your diet? What made you start exercising?
So what happened was,
or what did you tell yourself?
Yeah, so there was one day, this is before she had just left, right? Like, my health was crashing. It was just continually going downhill, right? And then there was, like, I started becoming more and more dependent on stimulants, like tea and coffee, kind of just get me through the day. And then there was one day when I had, like, literally drunk 8 cups of tea. I remember this day so distinctly. I drank 8 cups of tea, and by, like, still by 7 p.m., 7:30 p.m., I couldn't keep my eyes open. Like, there was just no energy left in the body. I think it was a combination of like the stress of not having money, the isolation from like people, right? Like none of them could understand my decision. My dad at one point had said that I'll give you money to go back to your husband, but I'm not going to support. ये क्या है? इसको मैंने जाओ पति के
The
पास.
health comes, but it comes with conditions, right?
हाँ. So all of that, na, feeling that like it was also conditional. No one really cared about what I wanted. Everyone had their own agenda. So it was a combination of all of that. And like I was not eating well. So there was that day when I was like, even those 8 cups of tea by 7:30, I had crashed. I was asleep. And then I remember my daughter waking me up at 8 p.m. saying, I'm hungry, make me some food. So that was a day, even before she went, that was a day I was like, I have to do something about my health. Like this is not okay, right? This is not okay that I'm opening my eyes and I'm seeing her tiny face saying, I'm hungry, give me some food.
Okay.
That I distinctly remember. I'm like, no, like from tomorrow, this is going to change. So I'd already started like figuring out what can I do for my health. And that's when functional medicine. So I'd seen this TED talk by Dr. Rangan Chatterjee of this approach, like looking at blood tests, using data, figuring out what's going on.
Okay.
Hope that was building up. So I'd already started doing that. And then about a month later, she went. So I started doing this. She got sick. So it's all like
happened in the
happening at the same time, which is like full chaos energy. But through that, eventually, she went, and then I had nothing else to do but just to focus on my health.
Okay.
What else to do now? So I continued to focus on my health. I would post on Facebook the changes I'm experiencing. I'd post pictures, right? Like, so I'd lost 37 kgs by over time, by July, not even July, by end of 2017. So people, friends and family on Facebook were like, whatever you're doing for yourself, we want that. Now, this was not immediate family because immediate family is still in shock with all the events that had happened.
Correct.
Because 7 years of my daughter's life, she and I were inseparable, and then suddenly I was okay with her just being taken away like that. They couldn't understand what was going on, right? So like, a lot of them thought there was Jadu Tona and Baba happening on my head. But that's when, like 2017, July is when, July or August, I actually took on 4 cases and told people that, hey, I learned how to fix my health using functional medicine and looking at blood work. And let me see if I can do that for you, right? So 4 people did blood work, could figure out like how I could figure out for myself, I could figure out for them also, right? Like one of them had insulin resistance, one of them had, and they saw the outcome of that. And I felt so good about doing that. I felt like this is it, right? Like this is what I'm here for, that to help people with their health. Because I'm sure you experience this also, right? Like when you take someone through a really great session and at the end of the session, they express that gratitude to you for whatever
Yeah.
they've experienced in that one session. That gratitude, that goodwill, that love that I would receive was far more fulfilling than anything else. And I knew that, like, and the thing is, like, they say, now, like, the universe helps you, it conspires to help you.
Yeah.
So the more I did this, the more my life was getting sorted.
Mm-hmm.
Money, with comfort, with like people reaching out to me, with building more solid connections, like friends, new friends, like who didn't judge me for those choices.
Okay.
So it just felt like I was getting blessed and rewarded if I continued on this path. And
Okay.
it just came, one day I just had this inspiring thought that I want to heal 1 million people. Now that 1 million people has become an entire planet, it was why aim small. So, so it happened over time. Like I helped a few people, they told their friends came to me, and then it just continued to grow. And then I was suddenly solving things like fibromyalgia and ulcerative colitis. These are things that doctors like give up.
Exactly. Yeah.
I was like, how did I get this ability to do this work? And I think at some point it's just because I just asked whatever source, universe, God, whatever you want to give, ki, bata do bhai, kyun banaya mere ko? Like, tell me, why am I here? And I promise to serve you to the best of my capacity. So that happened. So from like 300 rupees in my account to struggling to figure out how to live, I am at a point now where this company is valued at like $8 million when we're going for this round of funding, right? So
Very nice. Yeah.
it's insane. Like I share my story because
I'm getting goosebumps hearing it.
it's insane. Really insane.
I want to ask you one more question. Is after these 4 people you reached out, they were technically your first kind of clients, so to say, right? Did you see your immediate family, because they're your biggest critics, right? Did you see your first set of friends? Did they ever come and say, yeah, this one did HR for 14 years and now suddenly she's giving medicine and she's talking about changing people's lives just through food? Like I remember seeing your talks and you spoke about food. I think it was a TED talk where
Yeah.
you said, no, the biggest medicine, that it's the most cheapest one and all, but it's food, right? Did anyone question, like, what does she know? Isko kya malum hai? Like, she's done HR. Why would you listen to an HR person? At least from your close group. And
वो तो अभी भी है. मतलब
so how do you deal with that?
I tell my team, like, see, like one of the functions here is also sales. Na? Somebody comes to us asking us about, like, help me lose weight, and then we'll tell them this is this like 3-month program, this is the investment. They might not sign up, they'll reject.
Correct.
And I tell my team, like, you don't know what ultimate rejection is until you're consistently rejected by your family. So, Talk is there, Better India is there, Cosmopolitan, Vogue, Hindustan Times, I have been invited on like the most, whatever you would call, like brand name labels, and like
Who's who of
like every alternate day, some newspaper wants my quote on something, right? Food, loss and all. So if you like just Google me and look at the number of
there is quite a bit, yeah.
like it's there. Not a single person from my family has yet signed up for my service. Not one person. My sister had thyroid for the last 30 years, I think. She has not signed up. My aunt has like severe diabetes. Not one person has signed up. I can see all of them in my family are so ill. Not one has.
What do you think? Like, what do you think the reason is?
I think it's a issue with, like, this is generally not just my family. It's like human psychology.
Yeah.
There's a constructed identity that people have of you in their minds. And if you're fulfilling that identity, they're chill with you, right? I broke it for myself itself. They can't come to terms with that broken identity because this is them having to shift. Like the work I did in the constructs of my mind when I was in Toronto alone, like why marriage, why am I here, what happens if I let go, what happens if I break this. They have to do that for themselves. Now, what happens if I accept Mugdha as a leading health expert in India? What does that say? That I was wrong about judging her for walking out of the marriage. It means she made the right choice. It means look at her, she's happy. Maybe not everyone is meant to be happy. Maybe my daughter can get out of a marriage and be happier. So many layers there, no?
That's so many, yeah. So there's another very close friend of mine, no? The girl who's my first podcast episode was with her. She faces the same thing. She's one of the biggest celebrity yoga teachers in India.
Wow.
Like, she's done a lot of retreats in India. She's done retreats abroad. She trains the who's who of Bollywood. You name the top guys and she trains them, right? But she has these really awesome boot camps that she does online. I go for like I'm a yoga teacher. I'm like I can say I'm reasonably fit, but I die in them. Like I really die. They're so intense. But the people who joined, no, have been there with her for years. They love her to bits. But her family may say no one comes. Or from closer friends, she keeps saying, "Arey, join, no, yaar. You want to lose weight. You are grumbling. Just do this. Just come. Just try it. No one comes."
They have to accept that you've grown beyond where they are.
Huh.
It's a big ego problem because their understanding or their identity of you or their construct in their mind of you is the small version that was very comfortable.
Correct.
To accept who you are now means they have to accept that they are no longer in the same place as you are.
Exactly. That's a difficult.
It is a difficult thing. So what do I find acceptability for from the same set of people? I hold no grudges against them. I really have a lot of compassion and love for them because I wouldn't be me if I couldn't hold that space for them. So once a year, I'll do like a family lunch or something, right? There's amazing, like everyone says yes to that. There's so much love, there's so much fun, there's so much laughter, right? Because I'm fitting into a certain mold that they are comfortable with.
Correct.
Right? With some of my friends, like if I meet them, if I just hang out with them the way we did in college, there's a lot of comfort and all.
Okay.
If I invite them into a conversation, let's say about psychedelics, or like, can't happen.
So that actually brings me to my next question is, what made you so mentally strong? Like a lot of your journey is just you being insanely, like it's more than the physical bit or the physical transformation or you leading a company now. You need to be insanely mentally strong. So like what were the things? Like you talking to yourself for sure. I've kind of figured that out. You talk to yourself a lot.
Yeah.
No? You believing in yourself that I can be better than the shit I'm going to right now. There has to be something better in the future. You manifesting things, you imagining a better life. Like besides these things, is there anything else that you kind of do on a regular basis?
So I think for me, what gave me strength was my spiritual connection all along, really. Like even as a kid, no, I wandered more in the spirit domain than that's why trees were my comfort zones, right? Like puppies and kids. And it's surprising that you say that I'm mentally strong, given that actually I was diagnosed with a mental health condition. My genetics.
Exactly.
If you look at my genetic reports, no, half those mutations, especially the ones around neurotransmitters, say that can lead to schizophrenia and bipolar behavior, right? So I think what makes us mentally strong is the fact that we might have underlying grounds for insanity and we accept those. when you accept the fact that things might be broken, I think that's when repair becomes easier. But anyway, I mean, that spiritual connection always has been my strength, right? Always. And the entire tumult of like the 2016 till this date, it is that, right? That connection, that knowing that no matter what, I am really going to be taken care of because I was created by something greater than me. I am a microcosm in a larger macrocosm. Like it is a collective, like it is one body. It really is, right? And like I tell this sometimes to some people, my students also from the academy, that in a human body, let's say there's an injury at some point or there's an infection or like something bites, every WBC is going to get alerted.
Mm-hmm.
There are things that are going to rush to that injured site and there are things that are going to be waiting, armed up and geared that if you need extra support, I'm coming there. It's like that with human beings. We are part of something much larger and we are just like individual WBCs. Right? We're supposed to be there for each other. We're supposed to resonate with the larger beings, the larger organisms' requirement for growth, and we're supposed to consent to that and align with that. So knowing that like my spiritual connection is really what has given me absolute resilience, right? Like from the moments when I was absolutely suicidal to now, like even in moments of when things are really going well and I'm very, very happy, a large amount of gratitude goes to the creator itself for putting me in this place and for giving me all of this knowledge and for giving me the ability to also bring that knowledge out, because I don't know what it is, right? Like there's something, and I'm sure each person is unique in the way they're designed, but for me, I find it very easy to integrate the creative and the flow and the spiritual and the download along with actually doing work of running a business. So it's really, we built it like a very conscious spiritual organization, right? And people veer off excessively towards the spiritual side and not be anchored enough in the material world, or the absolute capitalist world, which is like just very, very material and not giving any focus or attention to the spiritual side of things. I find I have the ability to balance the two worlds, and that's why I think I get the resilience, the mental strength, along with the divine support itself that's needed to run something like this. But
I just need to get more than getting your message out. I'm very curious about a lot of stuff that you do. So one, I know for sure you got insane amount of mental strength. So I got one contradiction I kind of figured or got to was you seem to be very, very mentally strong. Like you're powered through your whole life. You've taken a lot of decisions. But in a conversation, you mentioned that, when your mom unfortunately passed away and your dad, your mom used to support you a lot in the things that you did. You also mentioned that your dad supported you when your daughter was in hospital and all. Do you now in hindsight that you built iTribe and you built the product the way you built it, do you think the community angle came from your mom and your dad? Or do you think, because the contradiction I'm trying to understand is you seem like a very independent, strong-willed person, right? But at key junctures in your life, your mom supported you, your dad supported you. So how important do you think a community or a tribe is, as opposed to you? I know it makes it a lot easier if you have people to support you. But is that the reason that you guys created it? Or do you think you can do it by yourself also?
No, the community thing didn't really come from either of my parents' influence. It came from my own journey of being alone in my health crisis, right?
Oh.
So I was researching on my own. Okay, I had to go gluten-free, but what was gluten-free? Then, okay, jowar bajra, then what recipes?
Oh, okay.
I was like, I just wish there was somebody else in this with me, right? I just wish I had another friend to talk to, because there was no one else I could talk to. And that's when I signed up these first 4 clients. After those 4, whoever came, I was like, let's just... So initially the community model that we have, so it's called the Thrive Tribe, right? That formed just for recipes, like some people just exchanging recipes. Okay, no gluten, then do this. No seed oil, then let's do this. But over time, it blossomed into something so much bigger, to the extent like Avinash, who is the COO of the company, comes from the community.
Okay.
Comes from the community. Our CFO comes from the community. My investor is from the community, right?
I know, I read that. That's so nice.
So it's for me that I wouldn't be able to build iThrive without the community support. So I am independent. I am strong-willed. All of that. I am the anchor point. But there is no way I could have done this alone. Just like no way. Like even with, people say you're so consistent with putting up content on your Instagram. Every day there's a post and there's a video and all of that. That's because there's a team behind it. Left to my own, I would have done one Instagram post once in 2 months.
Okay.
And my team is now telling me I'm not doing enough on LinkedIn. After this, there was like a 3:30 meeting and you're not writing enough on LinkedIn. I'm like, okay. So it's without the team, without the tribe members, without all of the clients and patients or whatever you want to call them coming together, united in this vision of even the academy students are a part of a larger academy group, right? Everyone is here together cheering this little baby called iThrive on to make sure we reach our vision, right? That's how the ship is sailing for so long. So the community came in from that moment of me feeling really vulnerable that I didn't have anyone else with me on this journey. And
Okay.
Beyond that.
Okay. So my last question: do you want to like tell our listeners any kind of words of wisdom that you think is going to help them, that help you, and you want to like share?
I think the inward journey is far more important than the outward journey, because the outwards or the outer world is a manifestation of what's happening inside you. So for anyone who really wants to change their life, get better, improve, whatever, evolve, you have to go inside. You have to start understanding who you are, why are you the way you are, what are the constructs that are keeping you where you are, and then when you start solving those knots, automatically the outer world will start corresponding to that, right? So from where I was to where I am now, it shifted because I did the inner work.
Okay.
And then there are tools to do that. Like you can use breath work, you can use meditation, you can use movement itself, right? Like yoga done, asanas done consciously becomes that practice of
Correct.
you going inwards, right? So movement, breath work, meditation, building more conscious awareness into day-to-day stuff itself, right? That meditative practice, psychedelics play a big role in that. Like, it's illegal in India.
Mm-hmm.
If someone wants to like explore their own consciousness and like break out of where they are, those really help. But of course, like in an assisted way with a shaman and
Yeah.
yeah. But
I'm so happy you said that, because I know a lot of people would just like avoid it because it's so like taboo or illegal.
I tell you, they've been a large part of my transformation journey, right? Because they allowed me to break out of constructs that were like every time I felt I'd kind of come to a place where I needed to go step over the cliff and like move into the next trajectory. Plant medicine, things like that have helped me.
Oh, okay.
It's only like, it's just that in India it's all illegal, so you can't do any of that.
Correct.
And I'm speaking of things like psilocybin and ayahuasca and those kind of things, right?
Okay.
Those really, not cannabis and not marijuana. That just zones people out.
Mm.
Most of them then end up in the dude, where's my car? So, not that stuff, but really deep work with plant medicine.
Yeah.
Working with good shamans who can hold the space for you. And now Costa Rica, Peru actually is opening up for a lot of right work.
I think if it's guided and you have the right kind of help.
Yeah, I've seen young people just doing it as party drugs and then losing their sanity in the process, right? So
that's not right.
That's not right.
Cool. So thank you so much. I know I said half an hour, but we've gone to like an hour, 15 minutes. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for like holding the space and like for asking me my story. I definitely think it's time people know more and more. And yes, like change is possible, right? Like even if you're at the most ill, like mentally ill, physically ill place, you can transform. So transformation is part of nature's cycles. So
I'm so happy. You're the perfect example of it.
Thank you.
So all the best to you. I wish you drive everything.
Yeah.
All the best. And we should keep in touch. I'm quite sure I'm going to send you all the recordings and everything very soon.
Please do. And if you ever come to Pune,
I will drop in for sure. Yeah. For sure.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, man. It's been a pleasure.
Pleasure.
Bye-bye.